Hello everyone, good to see you.
Hiya.
Back again, another week, another lockdown life.
God, do you think it's nearly a year? It's getting on for a year.
I know.
Wow.
There we go, but yes, lockdown life doesn't mean that we're locked down, okay? Because whom the sun sets free is free indeed. So spiritually, we can rise above this. But I'm not going to be speaking to you like that this morning. Judith's going to do that.
That's Dave and Judith, by the way, in case you're new to the channel.
Yes. And
So, Horizon Church Senior Pastors Update.
yeah.
Weekly.
Yes.
The whole of lockdown.
And it's
almost.
it's the last week of January. I know.
Wow.
Anyway, good to have you with us. Judith, you're going to share a few thoughts with us.
Yeah, I've using this 1 year Bible thing. It's actually in the Good News version. I do like chopping and changing versions because otherwise your brain gets, I know how it's gonna say that verse. When you're as old as I am and have read the Bible as much as I have, it's good to change versions sometimes just to trick your brain into kind of like, oh yeah, I really must look into that and read that. So I was reading this the other day and it struck me, and it's from Matthew 13:31 to 33. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like this. A man takes a mustard seed and sows it in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, and when it grows up, it is the biggest of all plants. It becomes a tree so that birds can come and make their nest in its branches. And Jesus told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like this. A woman takes some yeast and mixes it with 40 litres of flour until the whole batch of dough rises. And I was thinking about, I don't want to trigger Dave's jokes, but I was thinking about small things.
I can't think of anything.
Anyway, while he does, and you know if you're Horizon and part of
small things,
this, you know exactly what
I'm struggling here to think of something.
Good. You just struggle. So the first thing is the mustard seed, and it's also, that parable is also mentioned in Luke 17, verse 5 and 6, and it says, one day the apostles said to the Lord, we need more faith, tell us how to get it. Well, I think that's true of all of us. Jesus said in reply, even if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, may God uproot you and throw you into the sea, and it would obey you. Mustard seeds. Well, goodness, faith the size of a mustard seed. Well, the common kind of thought is that the mustard seed that Jesus was talking about back in the day when he was on earth was the black mustard seed, which is 1.0 millimeters length or diameter, anyway, in size. Or for us who can't really get our heads around that, 0.039 inches. That's how tiny this thing is. But it can grow to 9 foot or 2.7 metres tall from that tiny, tiny seed. But the seed is only good if you plant it. If it remains in the packet, then it's never going to grow into a 9 foot or 2.7 metres tall tree and won't be any use to anyone. The seed is only useful if you plant it. So Jesus was saying, if you've got faith, just a tiny bit of faith, he says, plant it, use it, put it into action, because if you don't, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to grow. It's not going to benefit anyone. It's not going to increase your faith because you're thinking, oh, I put faith into that and look what's happened. That deposits even more faith because you can trust God for more things. So first thing about a mustard seed, it might be tiny, but it can grow into massive things. But it only will grow if it's planted and used. So whatever tiny bit of faith you've got, try this coming week to start planting it and using it. And then the second parable that Jesus taught was of the yeast. And it's a very small part of the ingredients of a loaf. Now, I did a random search on the internet for a recipe for a white loaf. and I added up the weight of all the ingredients it said that you need, including yeast, which is flour and water and salt and olive oil, actually, in mine. I haven't made it, by the way. And I worked out the percentage of those ingredients that yeast actually makes up. And yeast only is 1.65% of the total weight of all the ingredients to make a loaf. Now, 1.65, so let's round it up to 2. 98% of that loaf is nothing to do with the yeast. But tell you what, if you take that 1.65 away and you don't put yeast in, you have not got a loaf. You've got a flat, crispy, going nowhere, nobody's eating it kind of thing. In fact, I think I've seen some stuff on the internet where people forgot to put in the yeast and it's just flat. It's not a loaf. You can't call it bread.
Call it unleavened bread.
Yeah, it's flat and crispy. Yeah, and that's what they used to eat in Old Testament times, didn't they? So you can see what a difference, a tiny, in proportion to the rest of the ingredients, a tiny bit of an ingredient can make to the whole recipe. So the challenge, I think, that my thought today is, let's start adding yeast to our lives and see the result. You can say, well, what does that mean? Well, you can think of some stuff, but this is just to get your brain into gear. Your conversations with people. Try adding some yeast in, some positive stuff in, a good news story, something to be thankful about. Because often our conversations are dominated. We've just hit the horrible milestone of 100,000 people that have died of COVID. It's awful. And if we're not careful, we can focus all of our conversation and all of our attention on all the bad stuff that's happening. And I'm not saying we diminish that at all. It's tragic and it's awful. But if we only allow ourselves, our minds, to feed on the the negative, then that's not very good for our mental, spiritual or emotional or relational health. So maybe in a conversation, think, have we spoken about something really positive? If not, get that bit of yeast, that 1.65%, and drop it in a conversation. Maybe you could say, this thing really good happened to me today, or I heard that on the radio that encouraged me, or you could ask the person, okay, yeah, this is doom and gloom. Tell me something that's good that's happened in the last week, or month, or year, or 2 years ago. Keep going back until they can find something to be thankful for. I listened to a podcast from a doctor, and he was talking to a Holocaust survivor who is an eminent psychologist, I think, in America. And she said to him, he'd lost his dad this year, and he's 45, so he's had 45. His dad died when he was 45. So she said to him, well, you can turn that around. And he said, well, how? I've lost my dad, I'm just coming to terms with it. She said, well, you don't think of the loss of the future years. You look at the back of the 45 years you had with your dad, and you remember the good things. Remember the things you did together, the things you loved about him, the things that he invested into your life right now that he's still living on in that sense. And he goes, oh yeah, because he could change his thinking from negative, all negative. And, she's not saying, she said mourn his loss, so she's not saying don't mourn loss, but she's saying you need to flip your thinking and you need to think, well, I've been robbed of my dad. No, you had 45 years with your dad. Celebrate those and focus on something positive. So you can drop that out in conversations, a bit of positive yeast. When you have your chats with God, how much is it focused on the, oh my words, do you know what's happening? This is dreadful. Can you sort that out? I've got this difficulty. I'm fed up of this lockdown. How about increasing the percentage of conversation on praise and thanksgiving with God, right? So alter the balance of, can I have this and can you sort that out and can you do this and that and the other, to I'm just taking a moment, God, to have a think about my life and praise you for this or that or the other, or for who you are, or for you being true to who you say you are. And you'll be amazed at that tiny investment will have a difference in your attitude for the rest of the day if you start to add that praise factor and we're talking to God. Another bit of yeast, an act of kindness, maybe a text or a call, or ordering or sending or dropping, doing a doorstep delivery of flowers or a cake you've made, or a loaf if you've cooked one from this. Going the extra mile for someone. Maybe you in a family household and it's you do this job and the other person that lives in the house does that job. Well, maybe one day surprise them and do their job. So when they come to do it, you go, it just alters things, brings positivity into things, which I'm not suggesting that Dave...
Do you want me to do the cooking?
No, I'm just going to say, I cook, he washes up. Think we'll leave it
Dream team.
at that for that. So, yeah, be realistic of what options you take. But an act of kindness, thoughtfulness, just sowing a little bit. And I heard on the radio this morning all this COVID vaccine stuff and how the EU is, insisting on they get their fair share and whatever. And they just commented, do you know what the Netherlands have decided to do? Some of the COVID vaccine that they've received for their country, they are giving into, is it COVAX or something, about getting it around. They're giving it away to some other nations that can't afford it or can't access it. And I'm like, wow. You might you could say, well, hang on a minute, Netherlands, the tiny bit you're giving away, the billions of people on planet Earth, you're not really making a difference. No, don't poo-poo the tiny things, the small mustard seed, the tiny bit of yeast. It will make a difference to people that receive the vaccine that the Netherlands have given away. So, acts of kindness, I think, is a yeast and a mustard seed that we can use, that we can sow. So, the two small things, mustard seed and yeast, can have a huge impact and make a world of difference. But three things. One, don't underestimate them. When you come to think, I'll just make that phone call to that person, or I'll drop that plant off at their door. The lovely little daffodils that are coming up that brighten everyone's life up when they're there. It won't make any difference. No. Don't underestimate the tiny bit. Don't underestimate the time spent with God and praising Him. Don't underestimate dropping something and focusing people on something positive. Please don't underestimate it and poo-poo it and say, it won't make much difference. Yes, it will. Tell the loaf that the yeast don't make any difference. Secondly, use them. Use these small things. Put them into practice. Sow the mustard seed. Put the yeast into the recipe. Add it into your lives. Invest it. Use it. And thirdly, watch them grow and do their stuff. When the disciples said, we need some more faith, tell us how to get it, Jesus talks about a mustard seed. And they're thinking, I need a lot more than a mustard seed to do the stuff you do. Jesus is saying, start with what you've got. In fact, I read this morning with Moses, when God called Moses to go back to Egypt, he's like, no, you got the wrong man here. I ain't got a clue what I'm doing, how can, they won't believe me. And prove it to me. So God said to him, what have you got in your hand? And he's got his shepherd's staff. His stick. So God said, throw it on the floor. So they threw it on the floor and turned into a snake. He says, right, pick it up. It was a more dangerous thing. Picked it up by the tail and went back into a stick. What is in your hand, God said. What small faith have you got? What small bit of encouragement or positive acts of kindness or conversations that you can just add a bit of positivity? What have you got? Use it, and when it grows and it does its stuff in your life, or you can see it in other people, or they text you the next week say, do you know what you said about that? That was really helpful to me and it changed my whole week. Whoa, you've seen it grow, you've seen it develop, and then that encourages you to take that and sow more. So don't underestimate it, use it and watch it grow. Start today. In fact, when you finish this, I challenge you to have a think about what are you going to plant and what are you going to put into people's lives, like the yeast, to just change their thinking, change our thing. You've got to be, as Horizon, one of our values, intentional. Otherwise, this would just be like, that's a good thought, Judith, and do nothing about it. No. What are you going to actually do to plant that mustard seed and to put that yeast into your life and other people's lives and watch the difference it will make.
Great. Thank you. And interesting, they asked Jesus to increase their faith. They didn't try and do it themselves. And, you know, when we talk about little things that God uses, it's a challenge, actually, to our own thought processes that think that we're insignificant. In a sense, we are, but we mustn't forget that we're connected to the Almighty God. And when that little boy gave a few loaves and fish to Jesus, that was a small thing.
Yeah.
But when it was put into his hands, he multiplied that act
Mass catering.
and fed a multitude of people. So, yeah, the little things really do matter. You know, the phone call, just caring for people and all the rest of it. So, yeah, so as we bring this to a close, there's a couple of things just to mention. We've heard on the radio, earlier on, that there are some families and children. This is a national news story. I don't know how it applies around here. But there are some families that are really struggling with stationery, paper, even pens and stuff for their kids' homeschooling at the moment. They're using all sorts of things to write on.
Toilet paper even.
And leaflets and flyers and things
Yeah.
like that. That's what they said. So if you have any stationery, paper or anything, well, no, let's put it around the other way.
No, we don't be inundated.
No, we don't want to. No, we don't want it.
Horizon has paper, right? We don't need any more.
We don't. If
Gracious,
you
that was close.
have, we'd be more like W.H. Smith
Yes.
than David Judith Smith with
Yeah,
all that
absolutely.
paper.
No.
But no, if you do have a need for some paper,
Or you know of people
Yeah.
that have a need, please get in touch with us. We
Yeah.
can supply some paper and
we'd
stuff
love to
and
help out with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very practical. That's only a small thing, but they're important.
But can we just say, we don't
No,
want
don't start.
When Horizons run out of paper because we've given it all away,
we'll let you know.
then we'll ask you.
We'll let you know. Yeah. Phew. And the other thing is, don't forget, on Sunday morning, 10:30, we'll be live streaming on YouTube and on Facebook. We really, really, really look forward to being able
And
to meet
we
together
are
again.
going to try and remember to set up a Zoom after church coffee this
Okay.
week. I did forget last week. Oops.
No worries.
It was a bit of a rush last week. So we're going to try and do that. So maybe you can hop onto a Zoom after church coffee call. That would be great. It's nice to see people and just
Even
chat,
if it's just
see
for a
how you
short
get-
while, just to say hello.
Yeah, yeah. 10
You
minutes,
know,
that would do. Just see
Or
people's faces.
even short. You know, when we do meet together, it's lovely just to see people.
Yeah.
And just to see your face and say, hello, yeah, I'm fine. Can't stop, but good to see you all. Anyway, bless you all. Have a great week. And, you know, just keep focused on Jesus in your life. And let's do the small things.
Yep.
Because they grow big. Bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.